Hello and welcome to GuyLogic. My name is Temko and this is Eisenhorn Xenos. Based on the trilogy of Eisenhorn books, this is about the first book in the Warhammer 40k universe. It follows Eisenhorn, a Inquisitor, and his story, and it tells it through the game. It's a direct adaptation of the book, so you'll be hearing a lot of little snippets and paragraphs that are used directly in the book, in the game. As you can expect in a best-selling novel of a trilogy, the writing is pretty damn stellar. But is the game any good outside of that? Well, we're gonna find out just a second. First things first, we're gonna go ahead and look into the options menu and talk about settings and PC performance before we head into the gameplay. As always, you can press the annotation on screen and skip straight on ahead to the gameplay section. For the rest of us, let's go ahead and dive into some settings. Settings are split up into game, sound, and graphics. Gameplay wise, you have some sensitivity for your camera. I would put this one way down because during combat, camera is a bastard. You have controls, you cannot rebind these controls, you can change them between two styles, but really that doesn't do much of anything, which is a damn shame. You can also configure your gamepad, but it needs to be connected and mine currently is not. It does work with the gamepad just fine. In fact, in many situations I feel it works better with the Steam controller at the very least, which is what I tested with, than with a keyboard and mouse. They both are playable. You have some other tutorials, combat markers, and subtitles you can turn on or off. Pretty bog standard in all regards. Sound wise, you have music, SFX, and speech volume. All of this can be configured as you deem fit. It says the maximum is 10, but it is a gradual slider, so that is fine. You also can change between speakers and headphones, but I have not noticed a single difference between the two of these. So change these at will, but the three sliders are generally fine. I would have liked to have a master volume slider on top of that, but generally speaking, you can do fine with these three sliders. Other than that, we have graphics. Now the base graphics set just says change resolution, and that is really it. The game doesn't have a windowed or full screen mode that I have found, which is a damn shame. The game also has VSync and the ability to lock at 30 FPS, though why you would ever want that is beyond me. VSync as well, and if you do have a G-Sync or FreeSync monitor, I would strongly recommend that because there is some massive screen tearing in this game in my experience. Also, shadows turned on or off. You have some texture detail you can change from low to high, but even on high, the game does not exactly look great, and this is obviously from the fact that the game was originally slated to be a mobile release, and that was later adapted to PC port. Now obviously they have done a lot of work to make it viable for the PC platform, but things like textures and things like combat and interaction is very reminiscent of a touch control instead of a keyboard mouse with multiple actions available. Other than that, you do have an advanced post-processing menu with some actions, but again, these are not very complete or complex, and again, they are not very well defined. FXAA is available, it doesn't tell me if it's 2, 4, 8, it doesn't really say anything. Also, no other form of anti-aliasing is available. We do have chromatic aberration, some barrel lenses, motion blur, ambient occlusion, depth of field. So we do have some options, but not that many overall, and those that are available here are basic on or offs with no detailed definitions. Now, this is not a major issue for the game because you can run it at 400 FPS, mentioned by the fact that it was originally planned to be a mobile release. So there's quite a few things here that the game is not exactly heavy, and then you can reset your game data and as well restore defaults, which you might want to do. Outside of the Eisenhorn settings, you do have the armory, which has some of the various unlocks you have available, your companions and stuff like that, and you can check this menu outside of starting up the game again wherever you left off, but you can also do so in-game at basically any time it is convenient to you, which is generally fine. Also have some extras, which is a bit like the glossary where you can talk about lore and messages and stuff like that, and some online features, which is mostly the link to the Facebook page, which really isn't anything. So that really concludes the menu and option settings. Overall, a pretty complete options menu, but even then there are some notable things missing here, like the ability to go from full screen to windowed, which is strange in and of itself not to have that. And also some things like fine-tuned control over FXAA or SMAA or some other format of AA, and some other detailed notifications and notices regarding gameplay outside of just subtitles. It would have been nice to have a little bit more control of that. And obviously non-rebindable keys are always a negative mark, but then again, the game does run fine with both the controller and keyboard with over a million FPS on any given time. So, having said all of that about the options and the technical side of the game, let's go ahead and dive into some gameplay and talk about that. Now, the game is very heavy on dialogue, and I've tried to tone that down as far as I can, but I will showcase some dialogue later on in the video. So, let's go ahead and get into that. So the game is basically split up into two sort of segments. One is a free running around and hotkey interactive system, which is a clear adaptation of mobile gameplay with touch controls. Opening a door, you do by tapping on something when it's locked. Interacting with a jumping mechanic, instead of having an actual jump ability, you do by standing on a specific spot and interacting with a jump mechanic. Same goes for going upstairs, downstairs, opening doors, hiding behind shelves, jumping over ledges, jumping over walls. Clearly designed for touch controls in mind and not free-form movement, which the PC is generally the way to go with. That is definitely a bit of a shame that a lot of control from you as a player is taken away. Even things like walking on a ledge is not available for you normally, but is available if there's a specific action to do it in that specific segment. The second part here is that basically you have no choice in a matter. Everything is very defined as a single action, and you don't really do anything in that regard. Now, the single action is also translated into the combat system, which is a very bare bones adaptation of the Arkham style combat. You hit an enemy, you build your combo meter to do more damage, and on rare occasion an enemy will telegraph that they are going to attack you at that point, and you can use a different button to dodge that attack. There is a sort of quick time sequence where you can jump between enemies a la Arkham counter style, but it is very boiled down into a very simple mechanic where you press left mouse button to attack, right mouse button to dodge, and that's all you basically do. There is no further depth to it. And you can equip certain different weapons, but that is really it. And that is a damn shame, because the combat system is one of the game's greatest flaws, in my opinion. They could have done a great deal of stuff within the Warhammer 40k universe, within the Eisenhorn Xenos universe and story, to do a ton of things, but what they have basically done is create a cow clicker-esque combat system where you just press a button and the enemy will eventually die unless you go AFK. The second issue I have with the combat system personally is the camera is atrocious. Cannot remember the amount of times I've had an issue where I would try to attack something, I would miss, or he would face away, or I would move in a different direction while I was moving, and then trying to spin back around to go to that character, the camera would lose its mind and start spinning around left and right, meaning often I would get hit in the back or something like that. The second thing I am really frustrated by in terms of the non-combat experience is the fact that not only is everything very linear, it is also very simplified. All types of interaction can be navigated by either pressing left mouse button on a specific spot or by using the crouch ability and walking forward. There isn't any other mechanic in place in any way to do anything. Opening doors, you do so by pressing the space. Jumping ledges, you do so by moving to the ledge and pressing space on the indicated spot. If a ledge is too long, again, you don't have control over how well you jump. It's pre-programmed. You will hold on to the ledge and then climb up again. It is very, very boring, to say the very least, that you just go AFK, run forward until you see an interaction icon appear on your screen or somewhere else, and then just interact with it without using any form of thinking or... Now, there are some minor puzzle elements or some minor investigative elements that appear later on in the game, but these are quite slim and generally very obvious. You just point your tool at something and you hack it magically, and that's it. You continue. So from a gameplay standpoint, I am not really thrilled. The combat is kind of bland, and from the perspective of control of combat, it is also very subpar in terms of depth. From a gameplay perspective, in terms of navigating the world, from mechanics for navigating the various levels and mechanic encounters and mechanics, everything boils down to interacting with glowing orbs or pressing the left mouse button repeatedly, which is not that fun either. Again, these are clear symptoms and clear results of the PC conversion from mobile. Now, where the game obviously definitely does shine is in the storytelling aspect, and it would be very strange if it did not, based on a bestseller book. The voice actor for the main character is phenomenally well done, and I'll show you a little snippet of that right here, where we see him monologue to himself based on what the book has written. Again, the entire scope of the game is quite phenomenal, as it is set in the Xenon universe within 40k. So listen to this bit right here and judge for yourself how the voice acting is.
I hesitated. A merciful headshot would have spared her everything. But once awake, the hierarchy of hubris would not understand a mercy killing. Do you think me weak? Flawed? To set my duty before her suffering? I would gladly ignore one life in agony if I could save 100, 1,000 more. For I have the moral strength required of an inquisitor. Mankind must suffer so that mankind can survive. It's that simple. But to this day, I still dream of the slow death to which I abandoned her.
So yeah, voice acting wise, as well as story wise, obviously the game is pretty damn good. Even the voices for most of the supporting cast are pretty well put together. Where the game really starts to fall apart in terms of aesthetic for me is not in the story or the conveyance of it. It's not even in the aesthetic of the world and the variety of set pieces. No, it really comes apart in animation and graphical fidelity. Now, I'm not the person that doubts graphics above everything else. I can take a much uglier game when everything else is in place. A good combat system, good mechanics, in-depth story. I can take weaker graphics when they are still conveying what they are trying to do. In this case though, the graphics are very outdated. This is something that would look more in place in 2010 than it does in 2016. And again, a clear example of something that was originally planned for a mobile device, where the graphical strength of those units just isn't that high. And they've upscaled and tried to do the best they can with the graphics because they don't look absolutely terrible, but they aren't phenomenal either. And that is definitely a damn shame. But worse than the actual graphical fidelity is the animation quality. And animation wise, this game is a damn joke. I could have gotten past most of the issues I had, including the very bad combat system, to experience the Xenos story in a different jacket. But the moment I had a dialogue interaction between myself and a different character, or where I was watching a cutscene using the story from the books, the way the facial animations are made, the way character animations are portrayed, and everything surrounding that is atrocious. And for a game that leans so very heavily on its narrative, story, and expose, having this bad a character animation set for both gameplay and story moments is unforgivable. I simply could no longer enjoy the story because the medium that was using it to tell that story was a complete and utter joke in every regard. When even lip animations or facial animations, which are generally very hard to pull off, I'll grant him that, looked so comical and out of place that they might not as well not have had them at all and been better. In a very particular scene, very early on in the game, a character asks you, the Inquisitor, a question, and the way the character's face moves is like you had a sock puppet and the entire lower chin moved while still attached to skin. It looked hilariously bad and out of place, and that is a damn shame. There's one last mechanical aspect I want to touch on before wrapping this up, and that is the equipment system as well as what they consider trading in this game. See, you can equip different items and unlock these different mechanical items such as different combat swords, different guns for you and your companions in combat. You do so by either getting coins and then unlocking them in the inventory screen. There is no actual trading mechanic, there is no actual gold gathering mechanic. You just get it by killing enemies and you get it at the end, or you get it from the rare occasional chest that you can unlock and open up. Eventually you'll unlock these weapons, and each weapon has a certain few stats that do impact combat a little bit on a passive side, but that is really it. There is no further involvement in the system, and that again is a very sad thing because the game has so much potential in its core that it never expands in any way. Again, as every other system we've encountered so far is the case here as well. Now, there have been some preview builds going around of this game for the last couple of months to various YouTubers and websites, and generally the consensus of those critics was that the game had the potential to be good, but currently was clearly suffering from mobile game symptoms. Very simple controls, very simple mechanics, very subpar graphics, everything toned down for a very straightforward touch control scheme with very little depth, but leaning very heavily on the story of the Xenos books to convey its depth from a story and lore perspective, which, granted to the game, it does a phenomenal job of transitioning the story of the Xenos books into a game. That it does quite well. All the set pieces are in place, and I haven't felt in any particular moment playing the game that they really mismanaged anything particular from the books. It is a very, very well put together adaptation in terms of story. In terms of gameplay, it is extremely subpar, really being pulled forward by the story. In terms of graphics, it is very outdated and frankly quite ugly. And in terms of depth of mechanics and depth of gameplay, it does have some variance and some variation based on certain choices you make, but that too is extremely limited. Having said all of that, is the game still worth your time? And the answer to that is a resounding no. The variety of issues with the game, even taking into account the fact it is not a $60 release of a major AAA studio, it's coming out at $24.99 or a regional equivalent, even accounting for the much lower price than you'd expect from a AAA, it is still very subpar. The combat system is nearly non-existent outside of some basic mechanics. Animations are so bad they destroy any semblance of strength the story might convey from a visual medium compared to the novel, and the only thing carrying the game is the actual novel it is based on. So from all these aspects, you're left with something that has a very good story and does not convey it in any other way than a visual adaptation of that story. And if that's what you're looking for, then sure, pick up the title and enjoy. But from every other aspect, combat to investigation to graphics to animation to even audio, the game does not deliver quite well. And that is an accomplishment in and of itself in a negative way, because they have the full strength of the Warhammer 40k universe to gather both visually, aesthetically, and sound design wise their asset pieces, and they have not done a tremendously good job of that. So from start to finish, I really do enjoy the story, but everything else falls short. As such, there is no way for me to recommend this title at the current time. Maybe after some patching, some fixing, maybe a few graphical upgrades after release, and a heavy discount, I could say this game is worth picking up just to experience the story if you don't feel like reading the books. For any other reason though, no, this game is not one you should spend your time on. So thank you for watching. If you liked this video, press that like button below. If you didn't like this video, well, there's a dislike button for exactly that purpose. And leave a comment. Tell us what you liked. Tell us what we can do better. We want to hear back from all of you. And if you want to see more content like this on the channel, just press that subscribe button down below and we will deliver. And until then, I wish you a good day, and until next time, right here on GuyLogic.